Hello my friends, I am Ross of Adeptus Artifexus, and I must ask you, did you feel a bizarre pulling towards this video? Like some mysterious force was calling to you? Your chaplain may say that you must resist, that it is dark, that it is dangerous. But I know you can read, so you know that we are trying magnets today. Yes indeed, I'm going to attempt to magnetize my minis for the first time today. I got myself this box of lovely little rare earth magnets. So they are these small, cylindrical, 3mm wide by 1mm deep magnets. And they are perfectly designed for minis apparently, so I'm going to put that to the test. So let us see what happens. Will it be a resounding success? Or a threat that needs to be cast into the warp for everyone's safety, due to the sheer magnitude of the failure? Let's do this. First, I found myself a recently armless Firstborn Space Marine who agreed to be my test subject. I snipped him off some new arms and a plasma gun. I figured if he's going to be my Frankenstein's monster, I may as well give him the big guns. After some good practice of tidying up the new pieces, I gingerly held them up to him, just to get an idea as to how they'd fit on him before committing to any gluing. But very quickly the time came where there was to be no turning back, and I stuck his trigger arm to the gun. After some more reassuring size-ups, I finally busted out my new stash of tiny rare earth magnets. They were stronger than I expected for their size, by quite a substantial amount in fact. After prizing a pair from their brothers, and then prizing them apart, I took efforts to remember which sides was the positive and the negative. And I had no pen around me that could properly mark them, so I just kept them together for the time being. I then brought out my trusty hobby drill and spent some time trying to find a bit that was at least 3mm in diameter. A straightforward task when the magnet was so eager to cling to them, and as luck would have it, it appeared that the largest bit in this collection was precisely 3mm. Thus far, it seemed the Emperor was smiling upon me. Thus far. I took my drill bit to the torso first, and made a quick incision just under the shoulder, stopping periodically to see how well the magnet fit into the fresh opening. One of my main worries at the time was that I wasn't sure how thick the plastic of these Firstborn torsos were. Would they be thick enough to hold onto my magnets? Thankfully, after eventually breaching his shell, I saw that there was plenty of edge to get a firm grip on. So firm that when trying to remove the magnet, even without glue, it proved to be stubborn. I moved on to his trigger arm next, with more caution than the torso. While I knew that if I ended up drilling through his shoulder and out the other side, I could cover it up with his pauldron, it was something that I hoped to avoid altogether. Which, thankfully, testing the magnet's fit as I went, I got it to a decently flush finish without breaching through the shoulder. Things were only looking more positive. I also realised that I could simply use the magnet in the torso to ensure that the arm magnet would face the correct side. Very handy. I then took my superglue pen and, after testing the magnet alignment no less than 3 times for the sake of reassuring myself, I solidified its position in the shoulder. I then did the same with the torso magnet, and there was definitely no turning back now. Then was the moment of truth. The first true test of magnetizing 2 model pieces together. That satisfying click of the 2 pieces' invisible forces gripping each other was a dopamine release that I didn't quite see coming. Both I and the recently named Mat of Magnets were, as they say, well chuffed. As I drilled into the other side of Matt's torso, I did feel oddly apprehensive about sorting the other arm, as I had to ensure that it aligned both his arm to his torso and his hand to his gun. I wasn't sure if I should stick his offhand to the gun permanently, or leave the 2 arms as separate pieces. I was contemplating this as I drilled both the torso and the other arm. I also had to decide the orientation of the second pair of magnets. Would their polarity run parallel to the first pair, or in opposition to it? I knew that if I was going to make all my Space Marine arms modular with all Space Marine torsos, I had to be consistent. Ultimately, I decided to have them set to opposing polarities. It just felt right. I noted this choice down for future reference. I worked to ensure all magnets were nice and flush, then committed them to their new life as a Space Marine armpit. Now, while attaching both arms to the torso, I discovered without any doubt that the offhand would have to be directly attached to the rifle, as they didn't quite align, and Matt had a tendency to let go of his gun. Not ideal. So I used some of my trusty Tamiya plastic cement and let him get to grips with his weapon. As he was doing that, I took this opportunity to stick his pauldrons to his shoulders, and I was pleasantly surprised to see how well they hid any defect left by this process. It was looking great. So far, this was all looking like it was a process as straightforward as I didn't even dare hope it would be. Though since modularness was the name of the game here, I knew I had to make a second pair of magnetized arms to really make this proof of concept feel real. So, I picked out a good set of arms for Matt and got to work on upgrading them. Having just done it once before, it was a genuine breeze. It went down without a hitch. Though when checking how the plasma gun had stuck, it hadn't stuck too well, probably due to the rutted texture of the plasma gun foregrip, so I did it again with superglue, which cooperated. I decided to try a different method for attaching the bolt gun. I put the newly magnetized arms on the torso and effectively aligned the weapon for gluing that way. It was certainly a more straightforward process, though definitely more subject to the mercies of the torso and arms positions. As the gun set into position, I glued the pauldrons into place, wherein I was just as pleased as the first time to see how well they hid away any blemishes of the process. The magnetizing of Matt's arms had gone better than I could have expected, but like any imperial citizen who had a taste of a great art, I wanted more. And dear old Matt was showing his inner iron hands, and was just begging for further augmentation. So I removed his head, with the intention of magnetizing his neck. I figured that if he could raise and lower his gun, he should be able to change whether he does or does not look down the sights. Though an interesting challenge was presented, as I went to see how well a magnet might fit into the neck. It was very eager to join its friends in the shoulders. I moved onto the head itself, and snipped off the rounded neck, with a surprisingly clean finish right off the bat, I must add. Getting the impression that, so long as the torso's neck magnet is flush, it'd fit very well. I wasted no time in gluing the magnet to the head, ensuring that it was lined up in the center nicely. I then set to drilling into the torso. That was the easy part. The true challenge was trying to convince the magnet to sit in there, or even remotely get near the new opening, as my fingers were too big to push it directly in. I decided to just commit right away. I applied glue to the opening, and somehow forced the magnet down into the glue's grasp, which I was relieved to see held it firm. Then, it was time to see if my faith had been well placed. And as faith in the Emperor always is, it absolutely was. Matt and I were both very pleased with the results. He could both gesture vaguely with his weapon and look both ways before crossing the road. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or not, but I felt that his shoulders were slightly more raised now. I couldn't help but wonder, was this the neck magnets doing? Was the force of that dragging Matt's arms up into a slight eternal shrug? I decided that on my next magnetizement of a neck, I'll switch the polarity and see how that affects things. But if that was the only, possibly imagined gripe I had with the results, then I'd say with confidence that this was a resounding success. Indeed, Matt and I believe it was a great resounding success. I mean, look at how happy he is. Look at that. You ever seen a Space Marine so damn happy? But yes, I've definitely got the bug for magnetizing minis now. I think I'm going to do it at every opportunity I can, because it was great fun to do, and the payoff is so worth it, my friends. So if you get an opportunity to try it, you absolutely should try it. Right then, well, thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you enjoyed this and maybe want to learn more things alongside me, please do subscribe. It helps me out a great deal. And it makes Matt happy as well, doesn't it, Matt? Exactly. So until next time, may the Emperor guide your brush.